Yes, so we are live now. Hello, good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing good. Thank you so much for joining. So, let's wait for a couple of minutes and then we will continue with the session. So, I can see few people have already joined. So, hi Rakesh, hi Manoj. Thank you so much for joining. So, we'll wait for a couple of minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then we will resume our session. So, before we start our session, can you guys quickly confirm, am I audible properly and can you see my screen as well? Hi Gurpreet. So we have Shekhar. Hi Shekhar. So guys, can you quickly confirm in the chat window? Please give me quick confirmation. Hi Shiva. Okay. Shiva has confirmed that yes, everything is fine. Thank you so much, Shiva. Okay, so in the last session we already discussed a couple of interview questions, right? So I don't remember the exact count, but yes, we have just started. So we just discussed about the basics of Selenium interview questions. What is Selenium components, advantages, limitations, what we can automate, what we cannot automate, the locators part, some difference between find elements, the difference between multiple statement, WebDriver equal to new Chrome driver versus Chrome driver, search context. We have seen the multiple combinations, right? So let's continue now. Okay, so we have Deepak, Manoj, Shubhas, Gaurav, Shiva, Lipika, Somya, Nishant, Neha. So again, I want to say thank you all of you who are actually attending from day one. I can say few people are attending from day one. Even we are changing the time they are able to manage. So a special thank you to all who are joining these sessions regularly. Now let us start with the different kind of questions that you can expect. Now the moment you talk about interview questions, right now interview questions can be little tricky sometimes. So yesterday we discussed about the locators, right? So we discussed about 8 locators plus the relative locator. But if you talk about the XPath and CSS itself, there can be multiple questions in a different way. So make sure you understand the XPath selector and CSS selector in detail. Okay. So I will not be able to cover all syntaxes again because we just discussed in our live sessions. I would highly recommend you to go through that XPath and CSS sessions because many questions can come from that particular sessions. Let me give you some examples. So I have already written few questions. Let me just show you. Okay. So if you already know the XPath basics and the CSS basics, you will be able to answer them easily because they are part of the session. So the question might come, what is the difference between absolute and relative? What is single slash? What is the difference between double slash, right? So when you go with absolute, you use single slash. When you go with relative, you use double slash. So how you can reach to the parent node using double dot operator, or you can use something called XPath access, right? So we have seen parent, child, following, preceding, following a sibling, preceding sibling, ancestor, descendant. Okay, how do you handle the element which has the dynamic ID? So this question looks little tricky, but the answer is very straightforward. Whenever you get some element which has the dynamic ID, you need to find a pattern. Suppose one ID is dynamic. If it's completely dynamic, then you have to use some other attributes, or you have to use parent-child relationship, or you have to use the related locators. But if you are able to find the pattern, let's say username underscore 111, next time you refresh the page, it will be username underscore 234. Again refresh username underscore 8910. So in this case, you can use two things. You can use XPath start with function, or you can use a contains function, right? So contains can provide that what kind of ID or whatever attribute you mention. I just give example of ID, but this attribute can be name, this attribute can be class name as well. So based on that, you have to answer that yes, in this case we will be using contains function, or start with if it is in the starting. But if this situation is happening to the end of the id, then obviously contains will be applicable. Now, how to locate element with text without using linked text? Then again, you have to say text function, right? Because in Selenium, using linked text, we can easily handle the link and partial link text. But if the question is coming in a different way, how do you handle the element using text without a linked text? Then we have to use contains function with text, or you can, if it is static or the fixed one, you can go with the text function in XPath directly. What is XPath access? Just now we discussed, right? Now we also have some questions related to position based. Okay, so suppose I have 10 rows. Now you want to select the first row, second row, third row, in between if you want to select any other row, you can use position function also in XPath. So suppose the same example I have taken tr. If you have multiple rows, you can change the position and see that. And the last one, not the last, but yeah, one of the things that I noted is index based. So let's say even after trying all the permutation combinations, you are still getting multiple nodes. Okay, let's say 2 matching node, but you have to click only the first one or the second one. In that case, 2 options available. Either you can go with the index based from XPath, or you can use driver.find elements, which will return you list of web elements. Then you can say get 0 or get 1. So that's everything we showed in the examples, right? Now let me show you this as well. tr position 1. So let me open one application so that I can show you. Just a second, guys. Orange HRM, let's see if the credentials are working fine or not here. If the credentials are working, I can show you this position based as well. Okay, now let me show you that position one which I was talking about. So suppose if I go to this admin, okay, and you can see right now I have few records here. So I have 5 records. Basically this is the web table, right? So every row is a tr, tr1, tr2, tr3 and so on. So if I just right click and let's say inspect, and if I just say tr, you can see 6 rows, right? Total count is 206, 106 and 306 and so on. But if I use position, okay, so for example, if I just use, let me just copy this. Okay, sometimes because of the syntax I have to refer it. So you can see the moment I say 2, so you can see it is able to highlight the second row. If I say tr3, it is able to highlight the third row. In the same way, depends on how many records you have. You can, based on the positions, you can easily identify that in which position you want to relocate. Again, there are multiple ways, right? So position is just one of the XPath function. But what if you don't want to use XPath function? In that case, you can go with the index as well. For index, I would like to highlight another example. So can you see this 4? Okay, so I can see many people are not able to see my inspector. So let me remove my face from the live stream. Okay, let's do it again. And let me do one part. Just a second, guys. See, I'm using one software called OBS, right? So it has this screen resolution issue. Just a second. Come on. One second. Let me keep it here, but again this will not be visible to all of you. Okay, so let me see if I can show you in this manner now. See, this is little tricky here when we do with OBS. Just give me a minute. See, what I will do, even after this live sessions, I will create a dedicated video on like whatever questions we're discussing it. Anyways, I have noted here. So I will create a dedicated video on this as well again. But still, I want to... Okay, so guys, let's do one thing. This part, anyways, because of the screen resolution, right? So again, it will disturb the live session. So for the time being, just remember that we can change or we can locate element based on the positions and based on the indexes as well. I will try to create a dedicated video as well. Otherwise, even after this live session, I can quickly record a session of 5-6 minutes and I can show you this position based and index based as well. So let me take the next set of questions. Now these are related to XPath, but the same thing you can also expect in CSS as well. For example, if they ask you how do you manage the same thing with CSS, yeah, then in that case you should be able to handle it. So in CSS, either we use spaces or we use this arrow, right? So if they ask you what is the difference between space and arrow, They both are same. It is just when you want to traverse from one node to another node, you will be using space or you will be using arrow. Okay, suppose you want to traverse from TR to TD, right? In that case, you can give a space or arrow. So in CSS also, we also have these kind of options, right, where you can match the partial attributes, so whether it's ID, name, class name. So you can also use contains, starts with, ends with. So in CSS we have to remember just this. Let me show you. We just need to remember this syntaxes. So if you're able to see this part, so when you have to use ID with a CSS, you will be using hash. If you're using class, we have to use dot. If you have to use attribute, a single attribute, multiple attribute, there's a slight change in the syntax that you will not be using double slash. You just mention the tag, attribute and the value. If you want to go with contains, you will be using star. If you want to go with start with, then upper arrow. And if you want to use ends with, then we use dollar. So when you start attending interviews, at least you make sure you go through these symbols that we use. Okay. Now the next question is, how do we handle authentication pop-up in Selenium? Okay. Now this is little tricky because if you just talk about the support part, yeah, can you see? So there's a multiple times if you are working on a secure application, right, it will ask you to enter username, password. So when you start using let's say driver.get or driver.navigate to navigate.to, it will be asking us not a regular pop-up, it's a authentication pop-up, right, on top of your web page. So if you don't enter the credential, it will not even allow you to enter to the application, right? Now Selenium says you can bypass this if you bypass the username, password in the URL. Okay, so suppose if your application is mukesh.com, let's take one example. In that case, so http or https:// mukesh.com. If this domain needs a credential, then before entering this mukesh.com, you have to bypass or you have to pass the username, password. For example, if you see this syntax, you will be using username : then you have to enter the password and you can continue with the domain. If you see this example, if the username is test and password is test, you can bypass the credentials directly in the URL and it will not even ask that authentication pop-up. This is one way. Many times, generally what we do, we use @ in our password field, right? Sometimes because of that, it will not work. In that case, you can replace that @ with the special symbols. So just check out the special symbol for @ and you can give that in the password field. The moment it will go through the URL, it will replace that special character with @ symbol. Because after this @ you have your domain, but if in the password if you have @ right, sometimes because of this @ it will create an issue. So either you change your password, if not, just replace that with some special characters. So I forgot the special character for @. You can check and pass directly. And if you're using AutoIT, obviously you can use AutoIT, right? Using AutoIT, you can inspect, you can using keyboard events also you can do that. And so once you write your AutoIT script, you will get an exe file. You can call that exe in your script. So using a runtime class, runtime.execute runtime, yeah. So using runtime class, you can pass the exe file, and before opening the URL, it will bypass and it will not ask the further credential. So if you're using Linux or Mac, this AutoIT will not work. Now, very interesting, and most of the questions you can expect from this section called switch to commands. Okay, so before I start with switch to command, let me see a couple of chats because there was a lot of issues. Okay, so Kajal Mohanty says, Mukesh, can you please explain how to handle dynamic ID? So Kajal, the moment you had dynamic IDs, right, you need to find a pattern. If it is in the uh, first half, second half, in between, based on that you can use contains function. If it is in the starting, you can use starts with. We don't have ends with xpa 2.0, so starts with or using contains, you can do that. Okay, most of the questions I can see is from the screen is blackout. Really sorry for that. This OBS issue is, I could not handle it, so I skipped that part. Maybe after this live I can quickly record a 5-6 minutes video and I can share. I can see one question from Wonder SG. I want Java interview questions on collection framework. So first of all, please use your real name. If you want Java interview questions, guys, so what we can do after this community live session, if you want Java related interview questions, please let me know. We can discuss the same thing in the live, what we are doing right now. So why you are mentioning only to collection? Because collection is one part, right? Uh, the question might come from the complete core Java itself. So we can have the sessions for the complete core Java. Guys, just give me one more minute. Okay, let me remove this. It's creating a lot of issues. Okay. So now coming to switch to alert, switch to Windows, and switch to Windows. Okay, now this comes in a different flavors. So let's start with switch to command. So what exactly switch to command? As the name says, the moment you have frames, okay, the moment you have alerts, the moment you have Windows. Now when I say Windows, I'm not saying Windows application. You have multiple tabs, you have multiple windows open based on the browser settings. Okay, so if you have an alert, right, then you cannot handle the JavaScript alert directly. So you have to use a separate command called driver.switch2.alert, right? So it will return you alert interface. Based on that, you can accept the alert, you can dismiss the alert, you can also say something called get text. So now this question might come like, how do we handle JavaScript alert? How do we handle Bootstrap alert? How do we handle normal alert? So if you're having JavaScript alert, then only you have to use alert interface. Otherwise, you can directly use driver.find element. You can do type. So you can do click. It depends what options you're getting. Okay, cancel, right? If it is a normal alert, let's say Bootstrap alert, React.js alert, no need to call driver.switch2. It is only needed if it is JavaScript related alert. Now frames. Now this is again a separate question. How do you switch to frame, or how do you switch to nested frame? What is the difference between frame and iframe, right? Or they might ask you, can you give an example of method overloading in Selenium? So driver.switch2.frame is best example when you say we can showcase method overloading part. Okay, so if you just say driver.switch2, okay, then we have something called frame. Maybe I can show you here directly. Okay, so let's say driver.switch2.frame. So can you see we have multiple options, right, to switch to a frame? So you can switch to the frame using index. You can switch to the frame using name or ID. You can switch to a frame using web element. So what exactly it is? It's a perfect example of method overloading. Okay, which is again compile time polymorphism. So this is a part of polymorphism. In polymorphism again we have compile time and runtime. So in compile time again we have method overloading and constructor overloading. So this is a method overloading concept where they can ask you, give me one example of method overloading. So you can give this one example of frames. Okay, now if the question might come, how do you handle the nested frame? So suppose you have frame 1, inside frame 1 you have another frame, frame 2. Inside that also you have one more frame called iframe 3. So if the element is available in iframe 3, okay, which is a nested iframe, in that case how you will handle it? So first you have to switch to outer frame, then inner frame, then you have to go to the third frame, and then you have to click on that particular element or type, whatever it is. You cannot directly jump to the nested frame and perform operation. Again, the question might come in a different way, that suppose there is one web element, okay, and that is available on the page, that is visible, that is clickable, everything is fine, but still we are getting no such element exception. How do you handle it? See, in that case guys, it's high chances that either that particular element will be in iframe or it will be in the shadow DOM basically. Okay, so in that case you have to be very specific that how do you answer this particular question. Okay, now what is constructor overloading? Because if they will ask you about the method overloading, right, they can also ask about constructor overloading, that how do you where do you see constructor overloading in Selenium. In that case you have to mention about the first part. So we generally write Chrome driver, right? So in the Chrome driver itself you can showcase that this is the example of constructor overloading. Let me show you that as well. So the moment you write Chrome driver, can you see we have multiple constructor here, right? So we have constructor with driver. So when you don't pass any argument, it will create a default instance and it will continue. But if you pass Chrome driver service, so whatever Chrome driver service object you will create, it will start your Chrome driver with that service. You can also give the Chrome options. So suppose you want to run your test in headless mode. Suppose you want to run your test in a specific dimension. You want to mock the geolocations. You want to handle the insecure certificates. Anything, you can pass the Chrome options. And the one more constructor where you can manage the services and Chrome options as well. So this is the perfect example of constructor overloading, where you can mention that this is how we can do the constructor overloading in Selenium in case needed. Otherwise, if you don't give anything, it will take the default constructor and it will continue. I hope this method overloading and constructor overloading is clear to everyone how to explain in interviews. Please give me a quick information in the chat box. Guys, please give me quick information in the chat box. Okay, perfect. Now let's move on to the next question. How do you manage windows? Okay, so suppose you just have one window. In that case, you can directly continue and it will not give you any issue. But the moment you perform some operation, if that is opening a new tab or a new window, in that case you have to switch to that particular tab or window, and then only you can perform operation. For example, let's say if I just type driver dot switch to dot, you can see I have a window, right? So I can pass here the window name or handle, depends on how we are capturing it. So you can use one method called get window handle and get window handles. So with the help of these methods, you will be able to get window handles and you can use them while switching. In case you are giving something which does not even exist, for example, if I just give Mukesh here, so obviously there's no window called Mukesh, right? In that case, it will throw you one exception called no such window exception. So no such frame exception, no alert present exception, no such window exception. So how do you handle tab or multiple windows? Using driver.switch2. Here now driver.quit and driver.close make sense, because the moment you have multiple windows, if you use driver.quit, it will close all associated window. But if you say driver.close, it will only close the current active window. That you need to keep in mind. So Selenium automatically treat both in the same way, whether it's a tab or window, so you don't have to worry about it. So this question might come like, what if you have 4 tabs, okay, and if you say driver.quit suddenly, so it will close all the associated window. Now if you again try to do driver dot something, you will be getting no such session exception because the driver is null. Okay, so suppose if I close this, okay, maybe I have to show you example. So this is already, I have created one video on this. I will give you the link. So after calling driver.quit, if you again try to use the driver, you will be getting no such session exception. So these questions have the different formats, but you have to be very smart how to answer them. So normal alert is different. JavaScript alert, you have to use alert interface frames. So when you switch frames, right, suppose you are in frame 1, now you have to go back, you have to use the main frame as well. So using default content, you can go back to the parent page and you can continue. If you don't go to the parent frame or the default content, again you will be getting no such element exception. So this is all about the switch to command. So I'm not showing you the code for each and everything because I have dedicated videos for each and everything. So this is just, I'm giving you quick answers how you can handle them, but you need to understand how you need to write programs. Let me see some questions from the live chat. So Manoj says, is there any good website to practice frames? See Manoj, there are a lot of applications which have the frames. You can also see whether it's a one application, another application, frames will remain frame. You can go ahead and check the redbus.com. Redbus.com have the single frame and multiple frames as well. So let me see if I can show you. So if I open this Redbus, so you can see this pop-up, right? This is basically inside a frame. So if you just right click and click on inspect, let's say I want to click on sign up with Facebook or sign up with Google. This is in a iframe. Can you see this? This is an iframe, and this complete sign up window itself is an iframe. So if I show you once again, can you see this complete model frame is in a iframe? And if you want to click on Facebook or sign up with specifically, they are in a child frame. Perfect example for frame and nested frame. Please try to automate. Take as part of assignment, click on sign up and try to click on Google. The moment you open Google, it will open a new tab, right? And switch to this tab, try to sign in, go back. So one perfect example. Okay, so one question from Rakesh. This is coming a lot repeated. So iframe and frames both are same. See, the moment you say iframe, it means you want to embed one application inside another application that is using iframe. But if you have a frame set, okay, so if I show you, just type frame set in HTML, just open this W3 School. So this is using iframe, but if you just go ahead, just a second. Okay, so you can see now it's not supported in HTML5. So basically in HTML before this we used to have frame set and then we used to have frame, but now we all have the iframe. When you want to embed one application inside another HTML document, go with the iframe. And thanks for the confirmation. At least now we have the official confirmation that in HTML5 it's not supported. Okay, Rakesh, hope you got the answer. So when you initially we had the frame set, inside the frame set we used to pass frames, and if you want to just embed one document inside another, go with iframe. Now Virendra Chauhan is asking how, just a second, how can I automate wallet? Just a second, my screen is blinking. How can I automate wallet MetaMask extension on Chrome in the same window? So Virendra, have not used this MetaMask extension. Maybe after the session you can ping me and let me see if I can help you with that. Manoj says, what is the difference between action and actions? Okay, now action, we don't have anything called action, we have touch action. So if we just type actions, so in Selenium we have actions. Okay, if you talk about action, then it's coming from AWT package. Okay, whenever you have to do some kind of robot event, so even robot class is coming from java.awt, right? So if you want to do some basic type click on the desktop, you can use AWT package. You can use a robot class, desktop class. There you have action, that's a enum separately. But if you ask me about Selenium, we have something called actions. which will help you to perform some complex gestures. Mouse over, keyboard events, drag and drop, uh, release the mouse, okay, click and hold. All the advanced gestures will be coming from actions. And if you talk about touch actions, what is the okay, it's not coming. Maybe I will show you the official documentation. Just hold on. So if you just use actions class in Selenium, okay, let's open the official documentation. Yeah, this one. This is actions class. There was one more touch actions which was basically for mobile events. Where is that? Just a second. Okay, we don't have it that now in Selenium 4. I need to see the documentation. So basically only the actions class. Initially we also had touch actions. Maybe I have to degrade the Selenium version and see. So I hope you got the answer, Manoj, right? Okay, Ayappa says Java documentation is the best example of frame set. Okay, thanks Ayappa. How to test the desktop application? See, for desktop applications, it's not that stable first of all, but still if you want to use, you can go with the robot class, but again robot class is only limited until your Windows or the desktop is active. The moment you lock your system, it will not work. If you still want to do it, go ahead and use Seculi, that is based on the images, that can help you to automate the desktop application. If you want to automate again, you can also use UiPath, which is one of the RPA tool. So community supports community version will give you 2 bots to automate. So you can go ahead and try that as well. Now, this questions basically they all these questions have the same answers. So if I again show you this part. Is this switch to commands clear and other things are clear, right? Okay, so one question from Sukumal Bandar. Vakesh, what is artifacts of automation testing? Okay, so Sukumal, probably on day 4 or third day or day 4th, we'll discuss about the group ID, artifact ID. What is the artifacts in automation testing? So artifacts mostly used in DevOps, but I will give you how it can be done with the automation testing as well. So what do you mean by actual artifacts? Where you will store the artifacts, right? We'll talk about that. So let me take 2 more questions, then we'll continue with the next set of questions. Gokul says, I have tried WinApp it worked, but I will not prefer because we won't have proper support. So Gokul, WinApp and Vinium. So I have recorded a dedicated video on Vinium as well, but Vinium, if you see, there's from last 6 to 7 years there's no commit. Okay, so it's not in a state where nobody is actually maintaining. If you just type Vinium GitHub, if you want to automate, you can go ahead and use Vinium as well, but as I told, no official support. Last commit was 6 years back. So if you get any issues, nobody is going to fix it. If you see right now, we have around 88 issues with Vinium. So if your application is working fine with this version, please go ahead and use it. Now another is WinApp, right? So if I just use WinApp, And if you just open the GitHub, this also you can see from last 2 years there's no commit, right? So the last commit was only on the documentation side, but when it comes to the actual bugs, it has more bugs open. So around 869 bugs are open here. So let me put these things together. Now, how do you handle auto suggestions? How do you handle calendars? How do you handle non-select drop downs? How do you handle bootstrap drop down? How do you handle React drop down? These questions will keep on changing, but there's one answer, that whenever you find more than one web element, you have to use find elements. So let me tell you the approaches for each and everything. The moment you talk about auto suggestion, the moment you type, let's say M, it will give you list of auto suggestions, right? So the approach would be, you will be first inspecting the list of auto suggestions which is coming. So if I just type again, now basically all these options which is coming, right, the all are AJAX calls. So based the moment I start typing, it's making an API request, we are getting the responses, right? So how you can handle this? First you have to type, then you need to write one common locator. Okay, based on these locators, you need to store this in a list of web elements. Then you need to run a loop, and then you need to click on a specific one. Okay, for example, again I have this issue, I'm not sure how to show this. Let me keep like this. So all these options which is coming on the screen, now I will find a common locator, and based on this locator I will get list of 10 or 11 matching nodes, run a for loop and click on a particular one. So if I right click on inspect, yes, so if you notice here, we are able to find the complete role equal to list box, right? Now if I write further, I will be able to find unique locator, not unique, but which will match with all these elements. So this is my list box, then I have my presentation, and again if I further, so this is UL which I can use, and I can get all these values and handle them. Same thing goes with calendars. So in calendars you have TRTD, write a XPath which will return you list of web elements, run a for loop and click on a specific one. Same with non-select drop down, okay, whether it's a div tag, p tag, span tag, or any other UI li tag. Same thing, write a common XPath which will match with all the web elements, and then you have to click, or you can verify the conditions, depends on your test. So don't get confused with these kind of questions. These kind of questions will be asking, so that they will have a clear understanding whether you have handled this kind of situations or scenarios or not. But find elements with loop. Now how do we capture screenshot and how do we use them depends on whether you want to add in a report, you want to just capture the screenshot on the failure. So from screenshot also you can expect multiple questions. So the first question, how do we take screenshot in Selenium? So you have to use a separate interface called takes a screenshot. Okay, so takes a screenshot is a separate interface which will have method to capture the screenshot, and it can capture the screenshot in a byte format, base64 format and file format. So if I just show you this, takes a screenshot, this is a dedicated interface and we need to actually typecast this. So takes a screenshot is a separate interface. We cannot create object of this interface, right? So what we do, whatever driver interface, web driver interface reference we have, which is driver, we typecast. Once we got this TS, we are able to call the method call get a screenshot as, and we have to use one output type. Now in the output type, we can again mention, do you want in base 64 format, byte format, and file format. So if they're asking you how many types supported, 3. Now what is the difference? See, basically the moment you have use file format, it will capture in a file format and it will store in a temporary directory. It's your responsibility to move from the temporary directory to a physical location. You will be using a class called file handler. Okay, so if you just use in a file format, let's say file src, then you have to use file handler, and you can use copy from source to destination. So this is our source anyways, and here in the destination I can mention where exactly I want to save this file. It will throw you one checked exception that you can handle it. I will throw this as of now. This is one example. Now why do we need base 64 format, or why do we need in file format? See, there's a different use cases. So in this way it will be in your location, right? Whatever location you will mention. But suppose if you want to send a report along with a screenshot, right? In that case you have to, that screenshot should be as part of an HTML file. Otherwise you will get screenshot broken part, right? Because let's say if I send you one report, all the screenshot are in my desktop, but if I just send you the report with the screenshot, that will be misplaced. So generally whenever you have to attach in a screenshot and you have to share with the client or stakeholders, we generally prefer either base 64, which is nothing but a screenshot in a base 64 format, which is a string. And if we're using, let's say, Cucumber, and Cucumber 6, they supports byte format. So depends on the use cases, you have to decide whether you have to go in a file format, base 64, and byte. I gave you the example as well. If you are just doing locally and reports are available in local, okay, and you don't want to refer to any other location, go with the file. But if you want to send these files along with the screenshots, go with base 64 or byte. I prefer base 64, but if you want to go with the byte format as well, go ahead. Okay, so one question from Martin. Hi, I filled out a form with Selenium and I get to a part where it's asking me to import a PDF file. Can I do it automatically? See, Martin, whenever you have to, when you say import, you have to upload, right? So whenever you have file uploader, so if you just use send keys, if that file uploader have an input tag, you can easily do that. But if that does not have an input tag, that will open a new file uploader window. That is again, Selenium cannot handle it because that will be a window pop-up. So in that case, you can go with the keyboard events with the robot class. You can use AutoIT. AutoIT is again limited to Windows. Most of the time, 90%, that will be an input one for the file uploader. Just use send keys. In the send keys, you can provide the file path, that file that you want to upload. It could be CSV, Excel, whatever file it supports. No need to click, okay? Don't say click, just driver.find element, go to that locator or the file uploader part and say .send keys, give the file path. Okay, so this is again a very interesting question. Thank you, Savita, for asking. How to take a screenshot of failed test cases. Now, this can be done in different ways. Though, if you talk about the latest framework which is coming in the market, like Cypress, Playwright, Serenity, WebDriver.io, they automatically handle this kind of scenarios where the moment the screenshot, the test case is getting failed, it will capture the screenshot and it will add in the report as well. But if you are developing the framework from the scratch, then one way is in the base class you can mention something called iTest listener. So in the listener we can mention what you want to perform after the test is getting failed. So you can capture the result. So there's one separate interface called iTest result that have the information whether the test is pass or fail. So we can capture the state and we can call the screenshot method. So in the extend report, alert report, we have a predefined listeners. Okay, you can use that listeners and it will keep adding. If the screenshot is getting failed, sorry, the test is getting failed, it will capture the screenshot and it will add as well. Okay. Now one more question from Lokesh. Mukesh, can you please guide me which kind of automation testing would be suitable for UI, API, mobile performance? I'm completely new to testing and planning to system and technology. See, Lokesh, let me reframe your question. There's nothing called which kind of automation testing. You can do automation testing for UI, you can do automation testing for API, for mobile, for performance, for security, and depends which kind of automated test you want to write. So few frameworks in the market which supports everything, but there are few framework which only supports API, few framework which only supports UI, few frameworks only support mobile. And so if they are open source, you can integrate all of them. That's not an issue. So you have to learn one by one. If you're completely new to testing and you want to switch, I would recommend go one by one, take one by one step, start with UI or API, then go ahead and learn mobile or performance testing. But first stick to the functional testing part. Any more question, guys? So these are just few questions again. I told you the variations, right? These questions looks very easy, but you need to understand the psychology. You need to understand the questions, then answer accordingly. One question can come in different format, right? There was one more question in the chat that how do you use OOPS concept in your Selenium, right? So now the first line of the Selenium, like WebDriver, new Chrome driver, has many OOPS concept. So it's not they will be asking you directly. So depends on the question, you need to answer accordingly. So there was one more question, right? How do you where do you use encapsulation, where do you use abstraction, where do you use inheritance? So that I have kept for the last day because that will be kind of summary of all. Plus they can ask you how do you use these OOPS concept in your framework. That is another question, right? So one is while using Selenium, one is while you creating framework, how many OOPS concept you have used, how effectively you have used the design patterns, did you use the Java 8 streams or not, right? So based on the questions, your answer should be ready. Okay, so any more questions? It's already 7, so if you guys have any question, please ask. If no, then we can end this live. And sorry for today because of this my videos on the screen, we had multiple issues today. I could not show you the DOM, but anyways, we completed the number of questions that I have planned. So first of all, Wonder SG, please change your username. Manoj Bhatt says, how do you handle multi-threading with automation? So Manoj, when you say multi-threading, right? So when you start using TestNG or any other unit test framework, they already handle this part, which is multi-threading. So each and every test runs in a separate thread. So if you want to use, let's say if you don't want to use these frameworks, if you want to create multi-threading, so you have to use thread local. So what it does for each and everything, it will create a thread local. So if you have 3 threads, 3 thread local will be maintained, and you can save the state and get the state accordingly. So you will be using thread local a lot the moment you have parallel test with one reporting. That time you will be using thread local. So we don't use, if you don't want to use any, let's say, custom frameworks, but if you're using custom frameworks, they are already implemented. But if you want to build everything from the scratch, use thread local with the synchronization keyword. Okay, now I can see a couple of questions. So Manoj, do you want to highlight why do you want to implement multiple thread, like multi-threading? What is your use case? Because when it comes to the reporting, extend report listener have already implemented this multi-threading part. When are elements initialized while using page factory? So Shivan, wait for like till Friday. On Friday we will be discussing about we'll discuss about page object model. So with page factory, without page factory. Shiva says, how do we handle multiple windows? So Shiva, you have to use get window handles, which will return you set. So again, guys, there's one more interview question that tell me when do you use list and when do you use set in Selenium? Okay, we know that with find elements we'll get list, with get window handles we get set. So this is another question. When do you use list? When do you use set? So whenever we have to use multiple window handling, right, it will always return you set of strings that you have to iterate and continue. So Shiva, for better clarity, you watch out my video. Just search how to handle multiple windows in Selenium. You will get my videos, or just type by Mukesh Utwani. I have 2 videos on this. So there I have explained how you can iterate using indexes, how you can iterate using iterator, how you can do that with the help of for 3 different ways I have showed already. Sandeep says, hi Mukesh, is Selenium deprecated? So I will not say deprecated, Sandeep, but there's no changes are coming in Selenium, okay? Because Selenium 4 have already given you the dynamic grid. So Selenium used to create dynamic containers at runtime, right? Depends on how many tests you want to run. So now with Selenium 4, we already have a dynamic grid, which comes with, for each test, there will be separate container. And once the test will run, it will destroy that container. So if you want to go with dynamic grid with video recording, that is also available. So for each test, 2 containers will be created, one for your execution, one for the video recording. And if you have to do value mapping, then once the container will destroy, this video recording will be on the volume that you have mapped, and you can watch that video in case if you want to refer the execution. We can call me SG or you can call me SG. Okay, fine. Let's stick to SG. So Prakash says, how do you handle multiple tab in single window? So Prakash, as I said, suppose this is your welcome Chrome. Okay, you open google.com. So the moment you click on multiple link, let's say it's opening a new tab, right? So one parent tab and let's say 4 more tabs. Selenium consider each and everything in a different way. So there's a property in HTML called target equal to underscore blank. So based on that, it will decide you want to open in a new tab or new window. In both the ways, the approach is same. Lokesh says, is it okay to switch to different technology after having 6 years of experience? Yes, Lokesh, why not? See, 6 years is nothing, frankly speaking. I have seen many people, they change their complete domain, they have changed their complete technology stack after 10 years. So it's all about how much time you're able to provide, right? Because if you are just starting, you might take 6 months to 1 year. So plan a little carefully and easily you can switch. Testing is not that difficult, okay, frankly speaking. So if you learn the proper tool, if you learn in a proper direction, you can change. But do not be in hurry. Take minimum 6 months to 1 year of time and then you can change. Manoj Bhatt says, I want to use. But Manoj, tell me your use case. Because already this threading part is getting handled by TestNG for the reporting. And Selenium part anyways, right? So multiple browsers are running independently. Rakesh says, 4 years experience in Selenium. How many months we spend for interview question and answer, then get confidence? See, Rakesh, again, 4 years, if you're completely showing 4 years in automation, right? Then be ready. You can get ready, like if you have really worked, frankly speaking, if you have the real knowledge, 1 or 2 months is fine. But if you have never worked on Selenium, you are just going through interview questions, then I would highly recommend start automating, because the moment you start automating, then only you will get the real issues. You can crack the interviews, okay, by luck, but again, if you get a automation project and if you're not able to perform, again it will be a big risk, right? So even if you don't experience, start automating applications. Anyways, interview questions will be easy then, because you have already automated your applications. So 1 to 2 months is fine if you have worked. If not worked, 3 to 4 months, again if you have given enough time. Savita says, how do you handle dynamic elements? Savita, we discussed already. I guess you joined late, so maybe you have to revisit this video. Praneeth, difference between page object model and page factory. So Praneeth, as I mentioned, Friday we will be discussing about design pattern. So page object model you can implement with page factory, without page factory. So your question should be, what is the difference between page object model with page factory and without page factory? How to handle hidden web elements? See, Archana, whenever you have hidden elements, right, there is a property called display equal to none. So whenever this display equal to none, that element is hidden. So if it's completely hidden, it will appear in 2 cases based on certain events. So let's say until I don't enter the username and password, okay, first name, last name, email. So until you don't enter the email, re-enter email will be hidden. Okay, so the moment you enter email, then re-enter email will appear. So how do you handle them? There are 2 ways. Either you perform the actions which will enable or display the hidden element, or using JavaScript executor, you can add an attribute, you can remove an attribute. So in JavaScript executor, you can remove this attribute, then it will be displayed on the page and you can handle it. I already have a video on this as well. So maybe after this live, just check out how do you handle hidden web element Selenium by Mukesh Utwani. You will get my video. Okay, so what are the biggest, most important changes in Selenium 4? First of all, few libraries has been deprecated. Mostly the changes in Selenium grid. Okay, the complete grid has been revamped. Then we have what else? Relative locators, obviously. So I need to see the Selenium 4. Main thing is CDP, Chrome Dev Protocol. So using CDP, you can change multiple CDP things on the fly, okay, which was not possible earlier. So CDP, grid, few libraries deprecated. These are the biggest changes. There are few more. Okay, just check out the documentation. I'm not able to recollect all of them right now, but not much changes. If you are migrating from 3 to 4, you might see some deprecation notice, so please use the latest one. Rohit says, do you have video on Excel? Yes, Rohit, I have 2 videos. One, how to read Excel, how to write Excel, how to use Excel with data provider. I already have video on this. Okay, so there's one very interesting use case by Manoj. So guys, I will take 4 more minutes, then we can end this live. Remaining thing we can discuss tomorrow. Manoj says my use case is web application run in distributed environment of minimum 10 places. Whenever user do some access, currently security based, then need to access multi-threading. Okay, so can I go with TestNG for my use case? Let me read your use case once again. Web application run distributed environment of minimum 10 places. Whenever user do access, then need to use. See Manoj, right now the use case that you mentioned, right, that is your application functionality. We use multi-threading in automation most of the time whenever you are running multiple tests. Okay, all these tests want to access one common resource, in our case report, which is HTML report. So let's say if one report is one test is already rewriting the result of test or pass, or another thread is also writing, right? In that case you need to allocate the synchronization that if this particular test is writing the result, it should be in a lock, then the next test should be written, and so on. In your case the application might be running in the different places, but they all are running in an independent fashion, right? So I don't think here it will be much useful. But yeah, you can connect with me after the session also if you want to discuss anything related to your application. So in your case, TestNG will be benefit. Okay, so last two questions. Nishant says implicitly weight changed in Selenium 4. Yes. So now you have to use duration class. Okay, so another new name, Market Master. So Market Master, let me know your real name. Let me read your question. I have not worked on AP and I have been allocated for the same, just switch to new MNC. So first of all, congratulations for the new job. See, if you have not worked on one option, you have to start working now, right? So they have given you the project, you got this opportunity that you will be able to work on the APIs. But before jumping into actual APIs, I have around 25 videos on APIs, okay? How to automate APIs using Postman. 7 videos on how to automate API using REST Assured. So once you get the endpoints, first of all, understand what framework they're using, which tool they're using. Are they using Catalan? Are they using Test Project or any other tool? Based on the tools, you will be automating that API, right? If they're using Postman, go ahead. If you're using REST Assured, go ahead. So first understand what kind of framework, which tool they're using. But parallelly, try to see how you can automate some sample APIs. There's so many GitHub APIs available, Spotify APIs available, Facebook, Twitter APIs available, and yeah, Google APIs. Some APIs are paid, but most of the APIs are free. If you don't want to go with this real-time APIs, start using some fake APIs. Once you're comfortable, then start automating your real APIs. APIs are the easiest one, trust me. No sync issues, no locator issues. Just you have to be very careful with the authentication part, which kind of authentication you're using, what kind of payloads you're sending, and what kind of response you are doing, validating, whether just a response code or the node verification or the array verification. It so depends on how many test cases you have, which kind of test cases you have. Okay, so yeah, we are done for the day. We extended the session. So tomorrow we'll have a few more questions, few more discussion. In the meanwhile, if you have any other question, let me know in the chat section, or you can let me know in the comment box after this live. Technology is great. How to capture screenshot of a specific web element, Selenium 4. Very easy. Driver.findElement by idexpert.get a screenshot. Output type is file base64. We have a direct method now in Selenium 4. Nishant, yes, related to screenshot also changed. So as I told you, I don't remember the exact detail, but yes, in Selenium 4 you can capture the screenshot of a particular web element. Initially what we used to do, we used to use a buffer, right? Now we don't use buffer at all. Driver.findElement by id.get screenshot as output type dot file or base64 or byte. It will return and you can process accordingly. AP is asking which company is good for automation testing. See, we don't have any specific company for automation. If the company is doing automation, go ahead. But this is the hard, or I will say the bitter truth. Most of the companies, they take interviews for automation, but they will give you manual tasks most of the time. I'm not saying that every company does in the same way, but most of the companies are still doing manual, and they are again not encouraging their employees to do automation. So I don't want to highlight any company name. Every company have their teams. Okay, so if they have a lot of manual test cases, they will go with the automation. But if they have a small test suite, they don't have frequent executions, right? They generally do it manually. So don't focus on a specific company. Focus on a skill set. Start applying. Initially, you will not get automation project. That's completely fine. But try to switch to automation. Ask your manager or lead that I want to do automation. Okay, but even after telling or discussing everything, if you're still not getting automation, then maybe you can change the not company. Okay, but maybe different team. Try using IJPs, internal job openings. If that is also not option, then you need to take a call. Okay, that's all from my side. So thank you once again for joining, and sorry for whatever issue happened today. I will make sure that should not happen again. Again, I don't have much control on OBS, but still. So yeah, thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye bye.